Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And I would like to introduce today's guest, Nancy Calabrese. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
You are very welcome. I'm excited about our conversation today because you are all about sales processes. You know, you are an expert in this area. And we're going to talk about things that people don't like to talk about, such as cold calling. We're going to talk about generating leads. We're going to talk about that sales engine. And that's what you help businesses do, is to create that engine that drives. I mean, it is the fuel that drives the organization. Without sales, you can't really, you don't have anything if you don't sell, because then you can't even produce, right?
Well, yeah. And you know, in order to get a sale, you need to have an appointment. So that's the very beginning of the process. Without appointments, you have no sales. No sales, you have no business.
You're absolutely right. So Nancy, let's start. First of all, tell us more about yourself, about your company. How did you get into it, into the whole sales engine and the sales process?
Sure. Interesting story. I was always told in my 20s that I should go into sales. I never felt confident enough to do it. But when I was in my 30s, I took the leap and I became a headhunter. And I worked for two companies. And then I launched my own company in 91 during the height of a recession, and I had a non-compete. And if I learned anything at that time, is business is always out there. You just have to be creative. And I had my recruiting firm for about 20 plus years when one of our clients asked us to launch an inside sales department for them because not surprisingly, their producers didn't like picking up the phone. They swore it didn't work. And so they wouldn't do it. And I had 2.5 people on that account. And in the first year, we set 300 appointments for this team. And I realized, my goodness, not only were we good at it, there's probably a bigger need. So I sold that company. And in 2011, I started One of a Kind. Well, it was Search, and then we changed the name to One of a Kind Sales. And basically what we do is we provide lead generation, appointment setting services, and sales training and coaching to the B2B community. We play mostly in North America. And you know, I often hear, Adi, that companies are frustrated. They don't have enough qualified leads in their pipeline, or they are not hitting their goals because they're not picking up the phone. And what we do is we come in as their inside sales engine, from data management to creating the scripting and then executing the calls and setting quality appointments. And the key is quality. And I think a lot of companies in my space get a bad rap simply because they're not doing the qualifying. And in our world, our motto is, if there's no pain, there's no sale. So we don't waste our customers' time, you know, by scheduling appointments that aren't going to lead to potential opportunities. And the one value add that we bring to our clients is we're professionally sales trained. So each and every week, my sales team, me included, kind of learn the art of human conversation. It's like my podcast, Conversational Selling, right? It's all about the human connection. And that's what selling is all about. That's
Absolutely.
kind of my background.
That's
Yep.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I want to elaborate a little bit about one point that you brought up, which I totally agree with you in terms of recession, or in times of, when the economy is quote unquote bad or whatever. You said something very true, is that you learn that there is business out there. You just have to be more creative in terms of getting it, right? Or maybe the amount of effort, or basically the amount of action that you have to take is
Right.
much bigger, right? And it's like, has to be massive. If quote the 10X book by Grant Cardone, it's like massive amount of action, right? We want to have
Right.
massive action. So tell me more about that, and what did you actually experience?
Well, I think, the fact that I had my own business, I was out on my own. There was absolutely, I couldn't fail. I couldn't fail. So I just stuck to the activities that I knew I could control. And by doing that, I developed these wonderful relationships with businesses, because my guess is a lot of companies at that time just stopped working. They were, they were sure nothing was going to come from it. And it's an interesting example too, that when COVID hit, I had to figure out a way, okay, how am I going to stay in front of my people? How am I going to get my name out there? And that's when I launched my podcast, Conversational Selling, which was the best thing I could have done at that time. Not only do I enjoy it tremendously, but it really expanded my center of influence, because that's the key in selling, right? You want to continually expand your circles of influence so that people think of you and you become top of mind. So yeah, you can't quit. I guess I'm a survivor, because
That's
if I
true.
don't do it, I don't have any income, right?
That's true. I mean, it's the tenacity, it's the necessity to do that. You're absolutely right. And I'm just like you. I used to do a lot of networking in person, and before the pandemic, and when the pandemic hit, what do? I have to reinvent it. How do I do that? And that's when I also launched my own podcast. And I agree with you. It's the best, because I enjoy, I'm having guests like yourself, that we're having this conversation, but I
Yeah,
meet so many people, and we
yeah.
also help others because we give all this valuable knowledge. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I remember hearing a lot of salespeople complaining when COVID hit that they can't sell over Zoom. Why not? Selling is selling. You don't need to be face to face. I mean, it's always nice to have a handshake, if you can do a face to face. But I have found selling this way to be way more efficient, right? Because you're not traveling to and from. So you can have more opportunities to have meaningful meetings, with prospective clients.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Nancy. So let's start at the beginning of the pipeline. Okay. So let's
Okay.
say cold calling, or
Yep.
basically generating leads. What will be what will be your advice to the entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now, the
Okay.
business owners? What did you learn about cold calling?
Well, it's not dead. Cold calling works, and it's an important channel in your marketing plan. And for companies that don't do it, you're leaving money on the table because somebody else is doing it. And if you do some research online, a lot of C-suite players wind up doing business with companies just through a cold call. So that's very important. Don't disregard the other channels, but don't hide behind social media. And, when you do the cold calling, you need to have a system in place, something that's repetitive and professionally delivered. And what we do here when we work with clients is, depending on the package they sign up for, we will collect 3 months worth of leads, and we separate them into 3 groups. And for a period of 4 weeks, we're in front of the same prospects each week with different messaging. We do voicemail drops very professionally, and then we trigger an email that kind of mirrors the voice message. By the end of the 4th week, if we haven't gotten that decision maker on the phone, our last message is, we don't want to be a pest. Obviously, ABC is not a priority. And then we recycle that lead for 90 days and we'll attach some collateral or embed some collateral. Now, in
So
the
is that
course of the
calls
month,
or emails or both? I mean, how do you do that?
we do emails and calling, but our primary focus is calling. The emails that we send out really just are a mirror of the voice message. But if we do get a decision maker on the phone, for instance, and they ask for information, we have an introductory email that we would send on behalf of the client.
Okay.
During the course of the...
No, go ahead.
All right. So we're going to speak with decision makers that are not interested, and a no we take as a not now, and then we recycle those leads for 90 days. And then obviously what we try to do is get with the decision maker, and if we hear that they're in pain, we listen. We want to empathize with them. We want them to get emotional. And then we pivot, we set the appointment for the client. And the client will receive a data sheet that summarizes all of the contact information and the reason they're going to be either face-to-face or on a call. And we then set reminders in the system. So the prospect is reminded before the interviews, just like you and I remind each other about upcoming events.
Nancy, I'm going to stop you because I want to go back. I mean, I think this is an amazing process. So let's just that's what I do on this podcast. That our listeners know is just like pick apart that process. So then we can actually, because I want our listeners to learn from it, right? So you have the cold calling. You explain it very well. What are some of the do's and don'ts that you learn from your experience? What are some of the don'ts that you absolutely don't do while cold calling?
Don't make friends with the gatekeeper. She's not your friend. She's there to stop. Don't reveal why you are calling.
So how would you get through a gatekeeper? Just give me some examples.
Well, here's the thing. Who gets through a gatekeeper? Friends, family, and clients, right? Easily. If you sound like Mother May I, may I please speak with, they're not going to get you through. They're not going to put you through. Or if you compliment them, they're not there to be your friend. And a lot of people make that mistake. And so what we do, we're very matter of fact. Hi, this is Nancy. Is so-and-so around? I need to speak with them. Very matter of fact. Now,
and then I go, okay, well, what is it? They ask you what it is about. What do you say?
Yeah, you know what? It's a business matter. Is he around? Listen, I have to jump into a meeting. Is he around? You just try to, as best as you can, not reveal who you are and never say where you're calling from.
So what do you say?
As soon as you say where you're calling from,
because that happens. Okay, so I'm curious. So let's role play it for a second. So I go, okay, Nancy, you're calling, and I go, well, may I ask where you're calling from? Who are you with?
Yeah, who am I with? Oh, all right. Let me think about how I would handle that. Who am I calling? Where are you calling from? I'm calling from Jacksonville, Florida. Is he around?
Okay, what company are you with?
I'm with NYC. Is he around? Now, in my case, I would say Oaks. I wouldn't say the full company name. I use an acronym. Is he around?
Interesting.
Now, again, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it's more your tone and the fact that you have a sense of urgency. And then they more than likely patch you through. What you don't want to do is lie.
Right.
Because you'll get caught in a lie. Sometimes people say, well, I'm returning his call. Or my boss gave me a message to call him. Who's your boss? Well, Tim Egan. Is he around?
Right. So it's kind of like you really emphasize, is he around, or is she around, like in terms of like really the sense of urgency and getting through.
Right. Yep.
Got it. Okay, so then once you get to the decision maker,
Yep.
what is the first thing that you pitch in order to get their interest?
Hi, so-and-so, my name is Nancy. We don't know each other. Actually, your name was given to me by someone who suggested I reach out to you. I'm not sure you're the person I need to speak with, but if you give me 30 seconds, I'll let you know why I'm calling, and you tell me if it makes sense to continue. And we almost get no hangups at that point. And then I would say, well, gee, I work for Nancy Calabrese, the owner of One of a Kind Sales. We provide A, B, C. And, typically when I speak with other key executives, I often hear that they're frustrated, they don't have enough qualified leads, or they're annoyed that they have a sales team that refuse to pick up the phone because they swear it doesn't work. And then they're concerned that they're not going to hit their new business goals. Now, I don't want to profess to know your business, but is any of this relative and worth a conversation? And then we just zip it. We wait to hear what the prospect says. Now, in most cases, they're not interested, right? It's a no business. So then what we try to do is 3 attempts. So you do have enough qualified leads in your pipeline. How'd you get to be so lucky? What are you doing to make that happen? Oh, or you're using a current provider and they're satisfying you, and your sales team, they're doing that. And if it's still no, after the 3rd time, we say, look, obviously we can't be a resource to you right now, but I wonder if there's anybody in your circle of influence that might have an interest in learning more about what we do. Always ask for a referral, and we do get referrals.
That's interesting. Okay,
and,
so
and
basically, yeah, go ahead.
No, and if you say, yeah, I'm really frustrated with ABC, then I would say, oh my goodness, tell me more about that. How long has that been going on? Have you been able to do anything about it? Are you getting support internally to correct the problem? So that's where we become actors and actresses. Another important fact, I guess skill that we have is we're trained to listen to communication styles. DISC. Have you ever heard of DISC?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have. So, yeah. So some people are dominant, and when they speak, they get quickly to the point. Other people are influencers, and they like to be social. They want to, understand what happened the weekend before they get to business. And other people they work in groups. Now, now I can't remember what the S means. I always forget one of them. Supportive. So you find people that are like nurses and counselors in that communication group. And then you have the compliant, where most of the accountants, they're very detail oriented. And so we're trained to listen to how they speak so that we match their style of communication. And that's what makes, what we do really fascinating, because every call is different. You just never know until you get them on the phone.
Absolutely. Okay, so to summarize, basically what it is if, let's say, you are a business and you want to do cold calling, right? So first of all, you have to have the target, the list that you're going to call. Then you have to make sure that you actually have a way to get through the gatekeeper, and it's not by lying, it's not by overly being like the niceties, but just basically have a tone of urgency and determination that you're going to get through, and be very short and to the point. And then it's either you get through or you don't get through. Make sure that you have a pitch, like you said. Like, I like what you just said in terms of like a 30 minutes, like, introduce yourself, but you basically have to rehearse it ahead of time so you know what you're saying, so you're not getting flustered or don't know what to say when you have the person on the phone. But be a matter of fact, introduce it. It's either yes or no. I mean, this is what we encountered. I'm here to help, and this is how. And introduce it to them, and listen to the person. Ask for the referral. whether they want to be part of it or not. You always ask for the referral, but also empathize and basically listen to the person and talk to the person in front of you. I think this is very important. I think that's where cold calling gets a bad name. It's when you talk to to everybody like they're the same person and you don't really listen, because that's where the frustration comes in, right? Because you're not listening to the person on the other side.
Yeah, and you know, you made a good point. You should always have scripts, always. Some people like poo-poo scripts, but the script now is in my head. But you always want to have it handy so that you don't have to think about it. So what I pitch to you is in my head, right? We say the same thing just with different pain points. And then we learn more about what the prospect is experiencing. And that's where we can take notes and empathize and then make the decision, does this make sense to pivot to an appointment? If it doesn't make sense, you know, we always take the high road. And there have been occasions where I've had appointments and I listen to their stories and I say, you know, frankly, I don't think you need our services. And they're so appreciative that I'm just being honest with them. You know,
Right.
it's as you said, it's just either a go or a no-go. It's nothing personal.
Right. And that's part of the conversation. So I think it's very smart. Like that will be part of the process. It's also let them go if they're not a good fit. You don't have to service everybody. Now, you mentioned something very interesting, Nancy. You said we're in a business of no. What do you mean by that?
Well, 90+% of the responses are going to be a no. They're not interested. They're not interested. They're not interested. And you know, for my team, it's important. First of all, whenever we do schedule an appointment, we celebrate it in teams and a group feed, and they know that the no's are getting them closer to the yes. So we look at a no as, okay, I'm on my way, and it might vary from campaign to campaign. An example, like IT companies, it's highly saturated industry. You're going to get way more no's than you're going to get yeses. We had a very successful campaign with an insurance aggregator where we were able to set 4 to 6 appointments a week because what they offered was in great demand and of great interest. So a lot depends on the saturation of the industry. It also depends on the number of appointments will depend on the quality of the lead list, the size of the companies that we're targeting. The larger the company, the longer it takes to get to a decision maker. And on average, C-suite people typically will pay attention to your message after 8 to 12 touches. So you need to have that repetitive approach in place. And another thing that's so important, and I don't know if you have found this, but a lot of companies don't have a follow-through system.
Right, and I was going to say
they call one go around and then they don't call.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we do it 4 times a year, each time for a 4-week period or 16 weeks in total. And then we always recommend to our clients, the months that we're not calling, reach out to them via LinkedIn and put them in a drip campaign. So they're getting some marketing information from you throughout the whole year.
So basically you continue with the follow-up until they basically say no.
Yep. Well, even no, and then we will call them indefinitely unless they say, take me off your list.
Right, don't call me.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But a no is a not now. That's, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what you do in sales. It's like that hamster on the hamster wheel, right? You just keep going round and around.
It totally does. Now, what's your advice on how to make sure that those cold calls, appointments actually keep to their appointment time? Or keep to schedule? Because that's a tough one, you know?
Yeah, you know what? Most show up because our system sends out a reminder the day before and we call, no, 2 days before, and we call the day before. And so we get very few no-shows, but it does happen. It does happen. And
well, it has to happen. But I think, to your point, if you actually qualify the leads while you are on the cold call and you really care, it's not like setting an appointment forcefully with somebody, because then they feel like they're backed into a corner. They can't say anything. They said, yes, I'll make the appointment, and then they just don't show up. But if you honestly have a conversation with them, and you're also willing to say, you know what, this is actually not a good opportunity for you, then you really weed out those that are not a good opportunity. And that way you increase the number of shows, because that's what's important. Otherwise, you're really wasting time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, here's another really important factor. We have to make sure that our clients have the ability to close. We're only as good as the appointments we set. If our clients are not able to take it to close, they're not going to stay with us long, because they tend to point the fingers, right? They tend to say, maybe the lead wasn't good enough or whatever. For those clients, I always encourage they get some sales training, and I try to work with them separately, to give them like a script for first time appointment. Once you get that in your head, then you can keep the conversation going,
Absolutely.
and the important, it's funny, I just went to the summit for our sales training, and many salespeople fail to ask, what are the next steps? What do the next steps look like? You always want to ask for a next step. What would you like to have happen next?
Right. I mean, do you prescribe to a certain methodology in your training, in the sales training?
Yeah, well, we are big fans of Sandler sales training, which
That's what
is the
I
number
thought when
one.
you told me that script. I go, this is a Sandler script.
Oh, yeah. As I said, I was just at the conference. Can't get enough of it. And I've attended it for many years, and I always walk away with a different nugget of information. So I'm in their mastery program. I'm in their leadership program. I have everyone in my company, as I said earlier, including the admin staff, participate in Sandler, because it's just the way of communication. That's what selling is all about, the art of communication, effective communication.
Absolutely. I agree. Nancy, this has been a great interview, so much knowledge, and I'm sure our listeners can see how knowledgeable you are and how you can help them. So if they want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Nancy Calabrese, Calabrese. My website is oneofakindSales.com. One is spelled out. Or feel free to email me at nancy@oneofakindSales.com.
Awesome. And I will
Thanks
also
so much for letting me be on the show.
Notes so people can definitely reach out. You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, and thank you very much.
Yeah, and I get to interview you on Monday.
That's right.
Yes. Nice time. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.